Hello there, and welcome to July, Frankiesense and More with Frankie Picasso and Brent Marchant, our resident movie critic. How are you guys doing today? How are you
doing well? Doing well, thanks. How are you?
Very good, very good. Well, we have a lot of movies and some good.
Yeah, we've got a big picnic basket full of summertime movies, and given the fact that we're going to be on vacation next month, I figured let's give people enough to hold them over till September. So
Yeah. Well, this is a very interesting movie. It may not appeal to lots of viewers, but I love interesting movies. So let's start with Tuesday.
Well, I like Tuesday in the fact that it's sort of like a modern day fable or fairy tale, one for not just kids, but for grown-ups as well. And in this case, it tells the story of a teenage girl named Tuesday who is terminally ill. Time is running out. And she's living with a mother who is not really in acceptance of what's about to happen, even though Tuesday herself is. She spends a lot of time of herself alone because mom just can't really deal with the whole situation. Well, one day while she's at home, Tuesday ends up having a meeting with an unusual messenger, a large talking, shape-shifting parrot, who, as it turns out, turns to be the messenger of death. Now, she's not particularly upset about this because she's ready to go. She's in so much discomfort that she doesn't really want to keep hanging around. And she also notices that the death seems to be in pretty sad shape himself, because it's a pretty big responsibility going around and collecting the dead. I guess they're getting ready to pass on, and it's worn pretty heavily on him. So she ends extending him some kindness, like giving him a bath and getting him to talk and so forth for the first time in a while. And he's so grateful and surprised at her reaction that he grants her the wish that she wants, which is give her the time so that she can help her mother and her reconcile the situation and come to terms with it. Well, when mom finds out about it, she's really upset, and she does everything she can to try and prevent death from carrying out his task. But in the process of doing that, everything else in the world around them starts falling apart. And she and Tuesday both find themselves being approached by people who themselves are also on the verge of passing on, but can't, because death is being prevented from doing his job. So it's a situation that everybody has to resolve to figure out, how do we proceed? How do we make friends with this whole situation? And how do we move forward? And it's a very touching film in so many ways, in terms of, teaching us how to, as I said, learn how to make friends with the situation. Because look, death is the one fate that we all share.
Yeah. Don't get rid of that one.
and we might not always want it to come when it comes, but there's also times when we're ready to go, and being prevented from doing so is almost just as bad as dying itself.
Yeah.
And the parrot tries to convince them that it's okay to let go in a situation like this.
Yeah, there's a lot of themes going on, because you got the parent saying, it's okay to let go, it's okay to die. The mom is like, I can't deal with this. I don't want to look at this or deal with it. So I won't answer my phone, or I won't come home. I won't, then it won't happen. It can't be real. Then the after death, the mom is like, I don't want to go on. Like, I just want to join my daughter. Like, that's the best solution for me, and of course, not everybody can't just die after somebody dies, because life goes on. And so she has to reconcile with that too. He has to help her and show her that her life will go on. Like, just because, one ends doesn't mean the other has to end. And in some ways, people say that she's lucky to have the benefit of that time. And so you can't waste time, because her daughter didn't get that time. So
Exactly.
it would be selfish for her to give that time up.
And on top of that, when the world starts falling apart around them, it's almost like they're experiencing being in the middle of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And actually, the real apocalypse is not letting death do what it's supposed to do,
Right. Right.
which, I mean, that's just as bad as all these other things falling apart on their own. So it's a movie that has a surprising amount of depth, but in many ways, it told in the context of a fable, I think kind of helps to sort of quote unquote soften the blow
It
for a
does.
lot of viewers.
Yeah, I think it does.
And it also helps to, understand on a more rational, less hysterical level what's actually going on here and how to address it and accept it rather than just freak out and say, I can't deal with this, get me out of here, that kind of thing. And it's very profound. And one of the things I really loved about this movie is this is a terrific showcase for Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
I was
I
just
mean,
going to say that. Wow.
yeah,
Powerhouse.
it's really different from a lot of the other roles that she's done. And I think it's also interesting that she herself, having been a cancer survivor, there probably had to be a certain sort of very special meaning for her in doing this part, which might be part of the reason why she took it. And she really makes the most of it.
Interesting that they chose an Irish actress for the daughter. That was kind of interesting.
Yes.
Why not just an American? Why, all these different.
Well, I mean, a lot of times, fables and fairy tales are set in Europe.
Yeah.
And, they probably figure maybe this is an homage to, that tradition.
Maybe. Yeah. And for those who love her, no makeup, not like she just let it all out. And it was just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Very gutsy.
Now, one of the things I was a little disappointed with this film is that it really did not get a whole lot of marketing and promotional support when it first came
I
out.
never saw it come out. It didn't even come out here. I don't think it came out. Maybe it came out somewhere, but I certainly never heard about it.
I think it only played in major markets and it didn't play there for very long. I mean, it kind of slipped in and slipped out really fast.
You found it for.
I think it was in theaters here in Chicago for like maybe a week or two, but that was about it.
Yeah, maybe that's because it is a little strange for some people. For some people, I love those movies. My husband, he couldn't watch it. He got up and left. So it just depends if you can handle, different things. But again, like I said, I really loved it a lot. I had to buy it. I couldn't stream it or rent it, but that's okay.
Oh, okay.
It's worth it.
But it's something you'll probably watch again, maybe?
I think I would watch it again. I think you probably missed something the first time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, this one is it just became available for streaming, at least in the US this week. So, I mean,
yeah,
there is a way to see it. So, I recommend this one very highly. I give it 4 out of 5,
Yeah, I liked it.
And it's also got a lot of whimsical humor in it as well, and which is again something to kind of help soften the blow of the story and the message it's trying to convey. So
him, toking, and then him trying to have a drink with her. He couldn't do it, right? Beat doesn't work on the shot.
That beat gets in the way.
Yeah, the beat's getting in the way.
There may also be some things in there too that some viewers may find a little bit. I don't want to go so far as to say offensive, but it might ruffle some feathers, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Particularly when you hear about Death's comments about Jesus.
Yeah. But that was kind of funny, actually. That was funny.
But if you're looking for something different, I would recommend this one. And I don't know that it's necessarily something that's for the youngsters. They might be a little bit scared by the fact that even though you got a big talking parrot, it's still not necessarily a child-based theme that you let them see. But
no, I don't think it's a family movie.
No.
But it's a good movie. And even like I thought, oh my God, the topic, I'm gonna have to have that big box of tissues. And while there was a moment where you really feel her emotion and everything, you didn't quite get me as much as I thought it was going to.
Well, it's got a certain sort of warmth to it, and that's one of the things you find out
to it. That's okay.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you find out about Death when you see some of his other experiences where he's helping people pass over. he offers a great deal of compassion, despite the fact that he's there to do this very
Yeah.
grim task in their minds.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of partly what weighs so heavily on Death, and the fact that I've got to do this again today. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it weighs on him heavily. So
I think the movie, if you are afraid of death, I think the movie does bring a certain feel of
yes,
acceptance to it so that you're not afraid. I think it does
no,
that.
exactly. Well, especially when you see, when Death is able to do his job again, you start to see the gratitude and gratefulness that the people who are passing over express, because they're finally being relieved from their anguish and their pain, and they're ready to make the move to go on.
And it's a very gentle death. It's not,
Yes.
you know,
So
the real
yeah,
death.
I like this one a lot. I think it's
Yeah,
one of the most
it was,
underrated movies of the year.
yeah. All right.
So now we also have the theme of death showing up in A Quiet Place Day One. This is a film that's part of an ongoing franchise. This is the third installment, which, as people who are maybe familiar with the first two have seen, tells the story of these aliens who invade the Earth, who hunt by way of sound. So everybody's got to make sure that they stay quiet. And the first two films in the series were set in rural America and followed the lives of a family with mother and kids trying to survive. This one is an origin story telling what takes place on the first day of the invasion. And they tell the story through different characters in a different setting. It's set in New York City and focuses on a woman who was a one-time former poet played by Lupita Nyong'o, who is terminally ill and just kind of biding her time to die. And if she doesn't have enough on her plate already, she's thrown into the midst of this alien invasion coming on. And she has certain things that she wants to accomplish, well, before she leaves. But they suddenly become a lot more difficult to accomplish because of the background that she finds herself in. So she carries on with the earnestness and the sincerity to try and live out her remaining tasks, while managing to stay alive, not just to defeat her cancer, but also to, not get attacked
Yeah.
and devoured by aliens at the same time. And she does it with the assistance of two companions. One is her adorable and intuitive comfort cat, and the other one is a stranger who she meets who's having trouble dealing with this. But she gives him the courage to carry on and face the new normal that he's going to have to live with, just as she has been having to do with addressing her cancer up to this point. It's a very inspiring story. I mean, it's not something you would expect to see coming out of a horror movie. And one of the other things I like about this is this film is very much in the genre of what's being called smart horror, in the fact that, yes, you have scares and frights in it, but you've also got something more with it. You've got some greater depth, which is something you don't typically see in movies where they're looking to see how high they can get the body count before the film runs out.
So Joe
Um,
Krasinski wrote this one as well. Did he?
yeah,
Or
he
co-wrote?
participated in the story. I don't know if he actually wrote the screenplay,
Okay.
but he was definitely involved in there because this was his baby to begin
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but no, there's no carryover from what I can see in any of the characters. It's all new characters in an all new setting, even though it has the familiar um, aliens that you saw in the first two. And I like the first two, but I really like this one. I mean, I really came away from this saying I got a lot more out of this than I was expecting. And Lupita Nyong'o is just phenomenal. To me, this is an award-worthy caliber performance. And she's been overlooked a couple times now, even though she does already have an Oscar.
Yeah.
But this is one where she really has to stretch to convey what her character is going through. And she has to do a lot of it without talking. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, I mean, you got to stay quiet to stay alive, as the poster says. So, I mean, she's having to do it through facial expressions and body language, and she does it so well and so effectively that you feel like you're in the midst of this scenario with her as she's going through it. So I really recommend this one very highly. You don't have to have seen the first two movies to understand what's going on here. This one is strong enough that it can stand alone to tell its story so that you'll be able to follow what's going on. And I also like the fact that they set it in New York because it really distinguishes it in terms of the setting from the first two films. So I enjoyed this one a lot. I would give this one 4.5 out of 5.
Wow. High praise.
Yeah.
High praise. All right.
Okay, so now next we have one of the great movies of the summer so far.
That was really cute.
One of the great movies of 2024 so far, in Thelma, which tells the story of a 93-year-old grandmother who is scammed by people in a phishing scheme and takes all her money, and she's determined to get it back. And as the poster says, revenge has never been sweeter, because basically this is a movie about don't mess with old people.
Yeah, don't mess with grandma. It was such a cute movie, and I love to see that June Squibb actually had a leading role in her 90s, which is phenomenal. She's in great shape, man. Excellent shape. Just phenomenal. It was a fun movie. It was
it really was. I mean, and actually, you know, she's got a 70-year film career. This is her first lead performance in that whole time. And at 93, she's doing her own stunts.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, I mean, that's really pretty phenomenal. It's also marks a kind of a passing of sorts for the fact that her co-star, Richard Roundtree, this was his last feature film appearance. And the two of them have got terrific chemistry together. I mean, she works as her helper in helping her get the money back. And the two of them just mesh so well. I also like the fact that this is a movie that really manages to keep its pace sustained throughout. There really weren't any points where this was sagging or dragging or anything like that. And it also has a lot of humor in it that is really kind of outrageous, but it's never implausible.
Yeah.
It's something that a lot of comedies don't quite get right these days. They figure, well, hey, if we're going to go over the top, let's really go over the top. But then it becomes, you know, not terribly credible.
Yeah.
And in this case, they keep it contained enough, yet outrageous enough, that you can't help but sit there and laugh your behind off while you're watching this movie.
And the grandson was perfect. I thought he was just that right combination of kind of loser come, you know, lost boy, you know, what do I do with my life? He was great. And they had a really good chemistry. They had a really good relationship.
Well, one of the things I also like about the fact is this is a film that also has a more serious message in terms of the idea of don't underestimate seniors.
Yeah.
A lot of times they get looked upon as being frail and gullible and, you know, easily taken advantage of. And Thelma tries to say, hey, you know, I'm not out of the woods yet. I'm perfectly still.
You might have scammed me, but I'm gonna get my revenge.
Like, yeah, exactly.
You know, of course you don't know. They don't hear well. She never hearing aids in. She didn't know who she was talking to. You hear your grandson's in jail. Of course you want to help. Most people, and this is the problem, most people do that, and they do get scammed with these silly things until they learn about it once, and then they go, oh, now I got it.
Well, and the other thing too is, you know, here she's got a daughter and son-in-law who are basically saying, well, she's not capable of being on her own anymore. And yet you look at them and they're falling apart at the seams as they're trying to work the situation out. So, I mean, you know, don't throw stones at those glass houses. I mean, you know.
Yeah, they were the ones that really needed help, not grandma.
Now, one of the things I found out in doing some further research on this is based on a true story. It's based on the life of the director's grandmother, who is 103 and still kicking.
Good for her.
And they used her own condo as Thelma's home in the movie.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of personal relevance that the director has brought to this film.
Yeah.
And you can tell from the way that the movie plays out that this was a very personal, heartfelt project, and it shows in the final product, which I'm always glad to see when movies do that, because it really just makes it that much more
Oh yeah.
compelling
Oh yeah.
and credible for the viewer. So,
And I'm
uh,
glad that you could ride that motorcycle down the street,
uh,
down the sidewalk. That was brilliant.
this is another performance that personally I think is nomination worthy when it comes to
Oh
awards season. I
yeah.
mean, June Squibb was nominated for an Oscar in a supporting role once before, but she's never had the opportunity to play a lead until this movie, and she absolutely runs with it and makes the most of it. She's
Yeah,
just terrific.
totally. Malcolm McDowell was pretty funny too. But
Yes.
what was really real, which I thought was really, really cute, was she, when she was walking down the street, she goes, "Do I know you?" I mean, we do it all the time. "Do I know you?" You go, maybe, and you go through all these people, go, "No, don't know you," and carry on.
Yeah, well, I mean that's another sort of serious little thing that they throw into the movie, and the fact that she is a senior. I mean, she is
Right.
running into some of the issues that seniors run into, like memory loss and so
Yeah.
forth. But it treats them in a way that's not, dour or serious or over the top in terms of, um, being, this is really something we have to be seriously worried about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she thinks she recognizes someone. So what,
I mean, and the thing is, like, most people don't say hello to other people anymore. So the fact
No,
that she's, you look familiar. Do I know you? Was it your,
yeah.
grandpa? Was it this? Was it that? Like, where do I know you from? Right. And it was very cute. And you know what? It happens to me a lot. You see people, I know you.
Well,
I
your
mean,
secret's safe with me and everybody else is watching. So,
yeah. I mean, you know what? People think they know me, or you look like somebody, right? And they go, "Oh, no, it wasn't me, but thank you. I'll take
so
it."
I enjoyed Thelma a lot. This is
I do
another
too.
one that's going to get 4.5.
It's a good family movie. You can take
Yes.
to this one.
Okay, so moving on. Next, we have a movie that just opened this past week, film from Iceland called Touch, which is, as the poster says, one of those what might have been kind of stories. An elderly uh, Icelandic man who is on the verge of the early stages of dementia, and on his own in so many ways decides, okay, if I'm going to, take care of all the unfinished business in my life, now is the time to do it. And he's got some added pressure on the fact that the story is set just at a time when the COVID pandemic was beginning to emerge. So he's got a lot of things that are keeping him, focused and on track. In particular, the one piece of unfinished business he's most interested in finding out is what happened to the love of his life, who he had met 51 years earlier when he was a student in London. And he decides to throw caution to the wind. He's got really nothing that's holding him back from doing this anymore, and decides to go in search of her. And a lot of people, again, as in Thelma, are worried, like, gee, I mean, you sure you can do this? Your health, and are you going to be facing travel restrictions to get back home?
Yeah, so
And
long
he's
ago,
like,
find her.
I don't really care.
Yeah,
I want to do this. I want to see if I can find this woman while I still have the chance.
yeah.
Because they were very madly and passionately in love for only a very brief time when she suddenly disappeared. She and her father emigrated to London after World War II, but they packed up their bags suddenly and returned to Japan without saying anything. And he spent all these years wondering, was it something I said? Was it something I did? What made her leave? And he got on with his life, but he still always had this lingering doubt hanging
A
over him.
lot of people have that. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people can relate to that, like that first real big love. I wonder where they are today. I'd love to see them again. Even if, you did marry, he married, had a child, whatever, it's there. Like, it
Yes.
doesn't ever go, like really go away. And I definitely can relate to that. And what I loved about this movie, I really, really loved this movie a lot. Um, well, first of all, you could have a little laugh at COVID restrictions as you're
Yes.
watching it. It's a look back and go, oh my God, we're stupid. But, yeah, it was kind of funny. Just the sincerity of it and the beautifulness of it. And I mean, it wasn't like there was a lot of dialogue about I love you or anything like that, but it was just heartfelt. Like you knew it, you
Yes.
felt it, you could feel that passion that was so strong. And then boom, it went. I mean, I predicted the ending. I'm not going to tell people the ending because I want them to find the ending, but it still was beautiful. I love it.
Well, and I like the way that it was told in the form of a mystery as well. I mean, you got the main story thread where he's doing this search, and it's intercut with a number of flashbacks to show you where the story came from and why it's so important to him
Yeah.
to track down this person after all these years. It's very effective storytelling in terms of the way the narrative plays out over the course of the film.
And the actors were the perfect choice on both sides, the young and
Yes.
the old.
Yes. I mean, there was some concern about that when they were doing the casting, as I understand, because they weren't finding anybody to play the younger version of the lead
Oh,
that they felt would be strong enough to carry the story.
the male lead.
Yeah, and
He was so handsome.
well, as it ends up, the actor who played the younger version of the lead was the director's son.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Who had appeared
Okay.
he had appeared in small parts in a few of his father's previous films, but they weren't finding anybody that they, would fit properly. He decided to audition. He said, well, yeah, you're perfect. But do you really look enough like the older version of yourself to pull it off? And they're like, don't worry about it. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really did.
Yeah.
And it's really a very, as you said, a very heartfelt film. And there's a sense of the viewer knowing that these characters really did care about each other as deeply as they did.
Yeah.
Despite coming from very diverse, backgrounds. I mean, he was from Iceland, she was from Japan, and they meet each other in London. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting when she asked him, she goes, are there anybody from Japan where you live? And he goes, no. He goes, what about Asians? And I think in her mind, she was thinking, could I go there? Would that work for me? I don't know. Yeah.
But the thing is, when they first meet, it's 1969.
Yeah.
It's a time when there was a lot of caution being thrown to the wind.
Free love,
trying the untried.
especially in London.
Yes. And, it's a mindset that he ended up drawing upon again years later when he went in search of her.
Yeah.
That it's like, okay, I'm not going to let these social restrictions that are supposed to be governing my actions hold me back.
Yeah.
And he just decides to go for it.
Yeah. And against all odds, really, because when was the last time, oh, well, she was at this address 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Who sees an address for 50 years? Like nobody. Good luck. Yeah. But he found her. So there you go.
So this one is a good choice for, it's a good date movie in many ways.
A really good date movie.
There's a few spots where it drags just a little bit. The pacing could have been picked up in a few spots, but all in all, I mean, I thought this was a really good film at expressing what might have been notion that all was experience. And the other thing that I noted too is that I found a lot of similarities between this and that movie that came out last year, Past Lives, that everybody raved about, the Korean film.
Yeah.
I thought this was so much better. I mean, so much better. And I really feel like in many ways, this was the movie that one was trying to be, but just didn't quite pull it off.
I didn't like that I had to go to an art house to watch it because I thought it was a great movie. Everybody should be able to see this movie. Like it had to go to a specialty theater. We went on a Tuesday afternoon, like I think there was 3 of us in the movie theater, but that was nice.
Well, the thing it's interesting that you had to go to an art house to see it because it's playing pretty widely here
Oh, that's
in
great.
Chicago. I mean,
Right.
it's playing not just at the art houses, but it's playing in the mainstream theaters too. Now, how long it's going to stay in the mainstream theaters, that's something to be seen, remains to be seen. But the fact that this is getting um, a wider release than I thought maybe it typically might have, especially for,
Given foreign
a
language.
foreign film on top of it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
these days they pretty much go to streaming almost right away. Um, but yeah, I like this movie a lot, and I'm going to give it 4 out of 5.
Yeah. I'm there with you. This movie,
Hey.
I really like this movie. This is a fun movie.
Yeah, this is a fun movie. Late Bloomers. It tells the story of a 28-year-old woman who is seriously in need of getting her act together. She's continually blaming other people and other things for all the things that are going wrong in her life, when in fact, it really all comes down to her not getting her act together. Well, one night while after attending a party, she ends up falling and breaking her hip. And she ends up having to have surgery and going through rehab. And she's in a setting where suddenly she finds herself amongst people who are mostly many, many years older than she is. And given the fact that she's also incapacitated, it gives her a lot of time to reflect on exactly what her situation is and what her circumstances are. And she decides, when she meets her roommate in the hospital, an older woman who doesn't speak any English, only Polish, that maybe it's time for me to grow up. She ends up becoming sort of a de facto caretaker, even though she and the old lady don't exactly hit it off. But it gives her a sense of responsibility that she hadn't previously had. And it's important to her, not just for her own growth, but also to kind of heal some old wounds of hers that she's dealing with, in the fact that she wasn't, or she didn't feel that she was a good enough caretaker for her mother,
Yeah.
was an early onset Alzheimer's patient.
Yeah.
So it's a very kind of healing movie, healing story for her.
In ways like our first one, and they both ran from a situation. They didn't want to talk about that situation. She didn't want to see that her mother had Alzheimer's and was going to die and couldn't remember her anymore. So she left. And she didn't come home, and she didn't come home. And very similar in a way to the first mom. Didn't want to look at the situation, didn't come home.
Well, and also, it's not just the situation with their mother and not being able to get that relationship together, but also the fact that the young woman she's a would-be musician.
Yeah.
And she's not bad, but she doesn't really seem to want to devote the time and attention she needs to put into it to make it work.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a pattern that she's got where, she's got issues all different parts of her life, where, come on, girl, you got to grow up at some point. You're 28,
some responsibility.
And I think it's an important film for younger people to see these things. I hate to say it, but I mean, I think that there's a lot of younger folks who could learn a lot from watching this film.
There's a lot of selfishness going on with some young people, that's for sure.
Yes.
And I hate to say it, but it is true. And it is, I'm just going, it's
but it tells a story with a lot of very delightful and unexpected humor throughout. That's one of the things I really liked about it.
Yeah.
I mean, as the young woman is starting to get her act together more, she stumbles from time to time, but it's part of a learning curve. And I'm not saying that this stuff is going to come to you perfectly overnight the first time you take a stab at it. But the thing that's most important is at least you're making the effort.
Yeah.
That's something I think this film really is driving home.
Both had to make an effort, actually. Yes. Yeah. And I think, Magdalena, she comes to this country, doesn't speak the language, doesn't, know anybody. People are trying to tell her how to live, what to do. I think it looked like she was a dancer from the old country, or a singer dancer or something like that. Found a lot of, and just didn't like to be so constricted. And that's why she was so angry with life and mad at people. And so I think she really enjoyed that relationship that she had, eventually with this young woman.
Yeah, that's kind of a throwback again to Thelma, in terms of the idea of an older woman being treated as being incapable.
Yes.
And they're treated almost as being invisible,
Yes.
you know?
And that's what happens.
And
You do become invisible, especially women. Like, I used to say that you become invisible as a woman after, maybe 50, 60, just in terms of the other sex looking at you, or
yes,
people looking at you. You just become invisible now at a certain age. But you become invisible to everybody, to everything, to every aspect of your life, even your kids. My kids look at me like, oh, you're old now, so you don't know anything, or they pat you on the head and they go, oh, you're shrinking, or all the different stuff that happens as you age. It's just kind of like, you're a throwaway now.
well, and I think that, that one of the things that the old woman starts to realize over time too is that when her caretaker actually starts taking a liking to her, she appreciates that. That, hey, here's somebody who actually cares about me,
Mhm.
that I'm not seeing from a lot of other people. I've one scene in particular that's funny is when the young woman teaches her about wearing adult diapers.
That was hilarious. That was hilarious.
The old lady doesn't want to do it, but to show her that it's okay, the young woman puts one on herself. She goes, "Hey, these make me look kind of sexy, don't you think?"
Yeah, yeah. She didn't understand anything, but she understood that. Yeah, that was hilarious. That was so good, so clever. You know what? Like, that was really good. And she didn't want this crap forced on her, but at the same time, she wasn't making it to the toilet. So
Yeah, that's true.
you gotta do it.
This is the debut feature from a new filmmaker named Lisa Steen, and I'm really looking forward to see what she comes up with next because I really was very impressed by this.
Yeah.
This is a film that primarily played the festival circuit and really didn't get around a whole lot of other places.
Where
But
did you find this, on Netflix or Amazon or something?
actually, I saw it on the program of a film festival that I wasn't able to attend. It was out of town.
But now I think
But I marked it down on my watch list saying, okay, well, when this comes around, I want to see this. And it's available from multiple sources for streaming online.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, I
So
think I saw it on Apple. That's it. I think I found it on
yeah,
Apple. Yeah.
it's on Amazon too, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
so
think
yeah,
I
give it a
went
look.
to
This is another one that I give 4 out of 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Like, this is a lovely little movie.
Okay, and this is a wonderful film from England called The Old Oak, which is the latest and probably the last film from English director Ken Loach. It tells the story of the owner of a bar in a small English town where a number of Syrian refugees are moving in, and a number of the locals aren't particularly happy about it, partly because they're foreigners that they don't understand. B, they're afraid that whatever economic opportunities that are there, not that there are that many, are going to be taken away by the new arrivals. And so there's a lot of tension and friction going on between these two communities within this small English town. And the Old Oak is a bar that is essentially like about the only meeting place in town for people to get together. So you have the bartender and owner of the place who's put in the position of having to play kind of like mediator between these two communities, keep things from getting out of hand. And in the process of doing that, he's struggling with enough issues of his own, like being able to keep the place open financially, and also dealing with long established customers who had been his friends, but are becoming kind of ornery now in terms of their attitude toward the new arrivals.
Yeah, it's really ugly when you see, when it slaps you back in the face and you see the kind of racist behavior. And I'm sure from his perspective, he's seeing this in his, people that he's grown up with. And
Yeah.
it's hard to look at, hard to handle, hard to see it. When, he meets this young woman who's so delightful and so pleasant and respectful and everything else. And they just keep slapping her in the face, slapping her in the face. I find it very hard to watch that stuff because it's like so foreign to me, but people have to see themselves.
Well, and he's also put in a position of having to remind some of his older customers
Yeah.
Who came to that town from Ireland, and they were outsiders themselves at one point. So
Yeah.
Why are you giving these new arrivals such a hard time? You went through that yourself and you know, ended up getting accepted. Why can't you do the same for these people as well?
Yeah.
So the themes and the way the story is handled is very typical of this particular director. He makes a lot of films with very relevant and poignant social themes running through them. And if you've ever seen any of his other films, like Sorry We Missed You, or I, Daniel Blake, or Jimmy's Hall, that they're all very thematically very linked to one another. And this one is kind of a continuation of that. And I'm kind of sorry, you know, that this may be his last film, but I mean, he's 87
Mm.
and he's looking to retire. Takes him a couple of years to put a movie together in recent years. And he said, you know, if I try another one, I'm going to be 90 by the time I finish. I don't know if I'm up to that.
Yeah,
Um,
sometimes they are. You never know. People,
but, you know, if nothing else, I mean, if this is going to be his last film, I mean, he's going out on top. He's
yeah,
giving, you know, he's giving viewers again another kind of almost sort of, you know, polite, in your face sort of story
yeah,
that people need to watch and see and say, take the message to heart here. I've been doing that in my other films. I want you to do it here again, because these people, I mean, they left their homeland. They left virtually everything they had behind them because of all the trouble going on back in Syria,
yeah.
trying to start over. And now they're finding themselves being subjected to all this hatred and prejudice in a supposed sanctuary.
It's such an old story. It's like these people, it's like what's happening right now with the wall and this and that is, you know, do they think people come here just to come here? They're leaving a
Yeah.
horrible existence, looking for a safety net. And if those situations were reversed and the people here could just see themselves having to take their family for safety somewhere else, and everybody goes, no, we don't want you. We don't want you. Ooh, we don't want you. You know,
Yeah.
what's wrong with them? Nothing.
Yeah.
What's wrong with them?
Exactly.
Nothing.
Exactly.
You know?
And the director has always made it a point to take stories with themes like that and put them front and center for people to see and say, can you really consciously adopt that view
Yeah.
in light of the story you're seeing here?
Like that lead actress, like that was her first film. Amazing, right?
Yes.
They just found her. I think she did an incredible job. She was just a perfect cast, I think, you know, to play that and have you look at her and go, I hate you. How could you hate her?
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing about her that,
Exactly.
you know, she was just lovely. Yeah, he did such a good job casting that between the bartender owner, the establishment, and her. Really good relationship.
Now, the only issue I had with this film, and I'm not going to say exactly what takes place with this, but I found the ending to be rather abrupt.
Yes.
I mean, it just kind of almost just sort of ends. And I'm not quite sure why he did that. I mean, maybe he was trying to make a point that, okay, well, it is possible for life to go on, and, you know, we're not going to belabor that point. But it did seem to be like it comes to a very abrupt stop. So outside of that, though, I really like this one. This is another one that I'm going to give 4 stars to, because it's a really timely, thoughtful, uh, insightful,
Yeah.
in your face kind of film that needs to be seen. And it's available for streaming online.
Yeah. 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 It was a good one. I liked it a lot.
Okay, and then finally, we have something that we don't usually talk about very much on here, an animated film called Robot Dreams, which in many ways was, I came out in late May, right before the start of Pride Month. And in many ways, I think this was fortuitously timed in the fact that it's a movie that deals with essentially alternative relationships. Set in New York City in the 1980s, and it profiles the relationship between a dog and his companion robot. And, you know, even though they bop around New York and do all kinds of fun things together, it really is a love story in many ways. And showing that it's perfectly fine, it's perfectly acceptable to do something that's, you know, not exactly mainstream. And you see the depth of that coming out when they end up becoming separated from one another. and they desperately try to find ways to get back together again, but it seems like fate always, has a hand in keeping that from happening. So it leaves them each in a position of, how do I get on with my life? What do I do next? So it's very sweet. It's very tender. It's kind of a little meandering at times, which I found a little frustrating to watch, but it tells a story that you don't typically see, in an animated context. And, as I mentioned at the top, we don't really look at that many animated films because I'm not a particularly huge fan of the genre. I think a lot of the movies in it are kind of a little too manic and a little too inane for my taste.
Mhm.
So I like it when you've got one that is a little more meaty, a little more thoughtful. And that's one of the things that this movie does. It's interesting also in the fact that it tells a story with almost no dialogue. It's primarily done with physical gestures, hand gestures, and some very modest sound effects in it. But it's really all nonverbal, and I think that's important in the fact that it helps to emphasize that these are issues that are coming from the heart. Again, they don't necessarily need words to be expressed. You get the feeling that's meant to come across without having to necessarily put words on top of it to
Yeah.
make it known. So this one is available for streaming online. It may even still be in limited release in some theaters. If you're not a fan of animation, then, well, I wouldn't waste my time on it, to be honest. Like I say, I tend to pick my animated films very carefully in terms of what I do see, but I like this one, and I would give this one 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
So
Good job. I
yeah.
didn't get to see it. I didn't get to stream it. I couldn't find it, but I still will look for it. Let's see.
Okay, so before we close out, I got a couple other items I wanted to mention real quick. This past weekend, I went to a retrospective screening of the 1976 film Network. Was part of a special centennial celebration of Sidney Lumet, who directed the film. And it's so amazing. This is one of my favorite films of all time.
Really?
Yeah, it really is. It's a film that was so incredibly prescient about what lies ahead for us at the time it was released. Like I say, it came out in 1976. It tells the story of the workings inside a fictitious American TV network at the time. It was written by Pat Chayefsky, who was a pioneer in the TV business in the 50s. And he had such a clear vision of where television was headed in the years ahead in terms of such matters as the tabloidization of the news and the issues raised with media ownership consolidation and the sensationalism of entertainment. And at the time this movie came out, a lot of people thought, oh, well, is this really over the top? But the thing is, it was meant to be a satire, but a very on target
Mm.
satire in many ways. And it's showed up recently, partly because of the centennial celebration of the director's birth. But also, I think it's relevant now because many of the things that this movie talked about in terms of television, you could apply just as readily these days to social media. It's almost kind of ominously scary while watching this movie to see that, oh my God, this was made almost 50 years ago, and this writer and director saw all of this coming.
Yeah.
And they were just so incredibly on target
Wow.
in terms of the way things have played out.
Great actors. Great.
Yeah, it was nominated for 10 Oscars, won 4, 3 of them for the performances of Faye Dunaway, Peter Finch, and Beatrice Straight. Also got Oscar nominations for William Holden and Ned Beatty. and it was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director. I mean, just all kinds of awards across the board. And to me, was absolutely, positively deserving of everything that it got.
Nice.
This movie's been available for, for streaming and on home media for a long time, but it seems to have surfaced a lot recently, I think, in connection with the Lumet centennial. It's been on cable television. It's been showing up in special screenings. There seems to be a lot of buzz right now with it. And I think in part it relates to the relatability that a lot of people see in this film. I mean, I was really surprised when I went to see this over the weekend. It was in a theater that was nearly sold out, and it had people of all ages in there. And I was really encouraged to see that, and the fact that this was something that was not only getting old fans to go see it, but also younger fans to come in and see what all the buzz is about. Hopefully, it left a lasting impression. This one, I gave this one 5 out of 5, easily, hands down. One of the best pictures I've ever seen.
Nice. Nice. Well, we'll have to go see it, everybody. Revisit. Oh, look at this.
Yeah, now this is a little bit off track from some of the stuff we usually do, but I wanted to let people know about this who are either in the Chicago area or who will be visiting the Chicago area. There's currently an exhibit playing at the Griffith Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago called 007 Science. And this exhibit has an enormous collection of gadgets and items from all the James Bond movies over the years. If you're a fan of Bond, you'll absolutely love this. If you're just an average cinema goer, I think you'll still enjoy seeing it because they have so much stuff from all these pictures, these over 20 pictures from over the years, including 13 of the cars and boats that were in the movies, as well as lots of little memorabilia items from all the different pictures that are, the well-known stuff that appeared in all these movies. I absolutely, positively loved it. It was worth every minute and every penny that I spent going to see this thing.
Wow.
So if you're in the area or you're going to be in the area, don't miss it. It's playing until I think it's October 27th. And I think, if you're a big Bond fan, you'll really enjoy it.
Okay, I got a pet peeve that I have to talk about, and that is Horizon. I think that it was done a big disservice by critics. I think they panned it before it even had a chance, and so people didn't go see it. Now the second one isn't coming out into the theaters. I guess they said it lost so much money. And it was funny because one review I said, oh, well, he didn't even come out until like the second half of the movie. So what? Who cares when he comes up? He's an actor in the movie.
Yeah.
Like I actually really liked it a lot. And they said, well, we couldn't keep track of the storyline. If you can't keep track of that storyline, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be going to movies because there's only like 3 of them. And it wasn't that difficult to keep track of. But if you're a fan of a Western, and now I see it's on TV like a week later, I would watch it. I think it was worth watching. And it's not Dances with the Wolves.
Yeah.
But it was still a good Western. And I was really looking forward to going this month to the second one. And I feel cheated.
Well, Westerns are kind of a hard sell these days. I mean, in many ways, they've always been sort of looked upon as being sort of past their prime.
Oh, I don't know.
It's a hard sell to get people to go see a genre that's fallen out of favor pretty widely.
But you look at Yellowstone and how much people love that series. They're tired of it now, but they did really love it, I think. And they liked the first and second one, the preambles even more. And so I think maybe there's a jealousy thing going on. I don't know.
The difference is the medium too. I mean, that was made for TV.
Mhm.
And I mean, Westerns on TV still sell. I mean, you've got a lot of specialty Western channels on cable and streaming and so forth. So, I mean, you can do it there, but to get people to get up off their couches and go out to a theater to see a Western these days, I mean, getting people up off the couch to go out to a theater to see anything these days.
And I wonder if the theater is going to die. We were talking about that yesterday. My husband goes, there's never anybody there when we go. And
Yeah.
our kids don't go to the movies. It's very expensive for a family to go to a movie, right? I mean, it's probably $50 for us to go. And you take 3 kids and give them popcorn and a drink, you're at a couple $100 for a family that's fighting to pay a mortgage on a house. So I don't think any of our kids go to the movies except for one. I got 7 kids, so it's something else, I love the movies, but I think we're having a hard time.
Well, I think another thing that also might have hurt Horizon 2 is the fact that it's a movie that was being made in multiple parts.
Yes,
And that seems to be a growing trend that I don't really quite understand, because if you're going to do multiple parts, do it for television. Don't do it for a theater. I mean, getting people to commit to go out and seeing something that they know they're going to have to go back and see the next part in a theater when the first part was already expensive enough.
Yeah.
It's a hard sell. I mean, I'm looking, for example, with what they've done with the most recent Mission Impossible movie. I mean, they did part 1 last year. They're going to be doing part 2. I think it's next year.
Mission Impossible, like the thing with that, I mean, you've seen so many of them that you know what you're going to get, right? This was a 3-hour movie that you're not going to sit for 6 hours and watch.
Yeah.
But they knew that they had a big story to tell. Like Dances with the Wolves was a fantastic, top movies ever. Love that movie. If I had a chance to see the next part, I would have gone and seen it. I would.
Yeah.
There's some movies that you just really, really, really want to go back and see the end of it. And I wouldn't have minded because we went to a theater that's got really comfy chairs that go back. And it's like being in your room. It was great. I love it. But yeah, I guess I've always been a fan of Westerns. And so I just really, really love them. But I get your point.
Well, and unfortunately, it's situations like that that kind of add to the timid attitude of a lot of distributors and producers these days, saying, "Oh, well, see, that one didn't work.
Yeah.
So why should we, stick out our necks and do something?"
But it was almost like
different?
it didn't work before people even had a chance to go see it. And so they were already, people were going, oh, they're telling me it's terrible. I'm not going to go see it. And I go, you know what? I'm going to go see it anyway, because I don't care if they think it's terrible. A lot of times we've seen lots of movies where people think it's terrible and we think they're great, and vice versa, right? They think they're amazing and we're like, what did you see? Like it was just too commercial or something. So
Well, I think another thing that kind of hurt Horizon 2 is the fact that it also did not receive a lot of pre-release publicity, promotional support. I mean, I didn't see a trailer for it in the theater at all.
Oh, you did? I saw one. Yeah.
I mean, you know how often I go to see movies in theaters, and I never once saw a trailer for it.
Yeah.
The only thing that I really saw in advance was stuff that I saw online, or posters in theaters saying, the coming soon posters.
Yeah.
That was it. I mean, I didn't see much of anything else about it. And, compared to the amount of publicity I've seen to a lot of other releases,
that's true.
It really kind of got short shrift.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I agree. It did. I did see it. And that's when we looked at each other and go, yeah, I can't wait to see this one. When's it coming out? Right. But yeah, you're absolutely right. But we're looking forward to next, September, Sing Sing's coming up. That's going to be a fantastic movie, I'm sure.
Yep.
Really looking.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. And there are also some other things I saw previews for that are looking kind of interesting too. Is
Patio looks pretty good with Sean Penn. I think that one looks like it could be a good movie.
There's also a movie coming out with Aubrey Plaza, who I really like, called My Old Ass, where she meets her younger self through a mushroom experience.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, I think we've kept these people long enough.
Yeah. So
say goodbye.
Enjoy everything we told you about. You got a lot of stuff to go watch, and we'll, like the old song goes, we'll see you in September.
See you in September. Have a good summer.
Take care.